And welcome back to the MLB Hot Stove Daily here at the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Appreciate you guys joining us on a Sunday afternoon. Football season is winding down and the winter meetings are officially underway. MLB Network kicks off their coverage here in a couple of hours, but we're going to get the jump on them. We had quite the quite the audience anyway, earlier this year. Enjoyed the second half of the year with the family and just trying to get some stuff done. But it's time to get back to baseball. So without further ado, let's get it going. All right, so there's several different storylines that are already kicking off the MLB offseason anyway. We've seen some interesting trades. The Rangers traded away a salary in Marcus Semien to bring in another salary player in Brendan Nimmo. We saw a big contract go to the Toronto Blue Jays. Dylan Cease tries to rectify the ship there in Toronto after they fall just short of winning against the Dodgers. Congratulations once again to the Dodgers on winning the most, how should we say this, presumed championship of the last 15, 20 years. But hats off to them either way. You still have to go out there and get the job done. They certainly didn't look like world beaters during the season, but we knew that was going to be the case. It was all about the postseason for them, and that's what ultimately happened. Welcome back, everybody. Appreciate all you guys for the warm wishes and everything over the past couple of months. A lot of friendly faces back in the chat here again. Welcome back, Dusty, Vinny, Hank, welcome back. I like that still, Hank. No matter what, there's always an Upside Sports Network. Absolutely. Breggy, welcome in. Eagles fan, welcome in. Appreciate you joining us once again. I'm Heel. Everything's going pretty well. We're going to interact quite a bit with the chat, as we always do. One of the few creators out there that still interacts their chat and doesn't require you to do super chats. If you guys want to support the channel, absolutely, by all means, go for it, but you don't have to necessarily do that to support the channel. Just by clicking on the video, watching, having some fun, chatting along with us, you're more than welcome to join us here at the Upside. We're going to be live every single weekday, and we're going to try to be live on the weekends as well going forward throughout the entirety of the MLB offseason. Today is the first episode of many to come your way, so be sure to hit that like and subscribe. Follow us on X and on Facebook as well, Upside Sports Network and Upside SN on X. All right, let's see here. Armandus, welcome in. Winter meetings week, absolutely. I take off every year for this week, so that's something I always enjoy. How was Thanksgiving? Went pretty well. Had some other events go on, unfortunately, but all in all, you get to see family. What could be better? Let's see, with a head of hair, yes. Actually, just shaved the other day anyway. It's already growing back. Let's see, greatest World Series except 23. It was a good World Series to watch, I will say that, but ultimately it was, to me, I mean, with the talent that was accumulated on the other side with the Dodgers, I just didn't think there was a legitimate team that could hold a candle to them. They were, to me, the bread and butter of where this season was ultimately going to end up, and that's what it ultimately ended at. Sean, will the Cubs sign another third baseman like Bregman and Suarez? Missed you. Appreciate you for joining us once again. Jack, listen while I'm driving. Well, be safe out there. But as far as the Cubs, I will say that they are going to add some type of a third baseman. There was the article that came out just an hour or two ago about Eugenio Suarez. I doubt they bring back Kyle Tucker. I think his price is way too high, out of their range, which is why I would not have made the trade they made last year. Obviously, it did not work in a World Series title. We knew that when they made the trade. That's why I did not like the trade at all when it happened. Therefore, you look at the Houston Astros. They got a heck of a return for one season of Kyle Tucker. They got a guy they can count on for probably another 5 years in their lineup. And then, of course, Paredes. We'll have to see what the Astros look like going forward. But for Chicago, they basically traded away a nice everyday player in Cam Smith, as well as Paredes, in exchange for Kyle Tucker to try to get to the World Series this year. You got to judge it based on that. And ultimately, it didn't work. Kyle Tucker was great in the first half. Struggled in the second half, had injury issues in the second half as well. He's still going to command a hefty payday in free agency, but the Cubs really missed the mark on that trade. And in the next 5-10 years, we're going to look back on the Chicago Cubs and say, hey, why are they a bottom 15 team in the league? This is one of the moves that's going to lead them that way. Now, of course, they could always pull out of the tailspin here because, again, they trade away future assets for 1 year of a player. Going all in usually never works out, but we'll see how it goes for the future of the Chicago Cubs. Wooey, welcome back. Do you think there's any chance the Angels can get an ace in free agency? And if they do, would they have a top 15 rotation? Would they have one of the best top half of the teams in the league as far as rotation? I'll say no. I don't think they're getting an ace. I do think Mike Maddox is a nice addition as their pitching coach there. I think the connection there with Perry Manassian is part of the reason why he went there. I'm curious to see which direction that rotation is going to go. Do they go with cost-saving guys with future potential that may not have made it in years past, like we've seen them do in years past with Bundy and Syndergaard? They did the trade anyway, bringing in Rodriguez anyway from the Orioles. Injury red flags all over him. But for me, I don't think this Angels rotation is the worst in the league, but do I think they'll end up in the top 15? I doubt it by the end of the season. What TV channels are showing winter meeting coverage? Pretty much just the one. You have MLB Network. ESPN will do a little bit of coverage with their Baseball Tonight stuff, but there's very few channels out there that do it. Now, as far as actual YouTube channels, there has been quite a growth of channels here on YouTube over the past year and a half that do baseball content, so I appreciate you guys continuing to join us. Even with our long hiatus, we are certainly here for you, so I appreciate you guys joining us once again. Welcome back, Ethan. Where you been, man? I haven't heard from you in 200 days. Well, took some time off, enjoyed it with the family, got some stuff done, and we're back. We're going to be live, like I said, every weekday, and for the majority of the weekends as well. Who did the Mets get? Well, they already added Marcus Semien. Don't necessarily love the trade for them. Does shorten the long-term payroll that they have committed to that roster. But in all honesty, basically they cut down about $30 million in savings roughly over the life of that contract. And for Marcus Semien, you're actually increasing your payroll for the next few years. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to, trim their payroll this season as far as not go after Edwin Diaz, for instance, instead of bringing in Devin Williams and trying to backfill that way. I wouldn't rule them out of still doing some big things, but I don't necessarily like or buy the argument that they made to get the deal done. One, Semien is a declining player. He's after 35 years old. Players who have multiple consecutive down years of offensive production, especially at second base, just do not work out well. There was a couple of different voices that, you guys know I'm a Rangers fan, so I was listening to a couple of Rangers voices that had played the position for years. Ian Kinsler, Brett Boone basically said once you hit that declining window, 34, 35, 36, it's very difficult, one, to get those power numbers back up, and two, to ever reclaim the ability that you had offensively at that spot. Kinsler, of course, was known as a leadoff guy for years, as a power leadoff guy. That didn't work out so great, but I will say that he is still a premium glove in the field, which I guess is the impetus for making this move. To me, there's got to be a better reason than that. Not to try to cross over too many sports here, but we saw the Mavericks make the most egregious trade in NBA history, trading away Luka Doncic in exchange for Anthony Davis in the name of defense wins championships. Of course, we know all the other flaws that come along with it, but just look at where the Mavericks were at the beginning of the season. The offense, dead last in the league. Meanwhile, Luka Doncic was lighting the world on fire with over 35 points a game and almost a triple-double average in every single game this year up until a couple of weeks ago. Now, You look at where the team is now. Obviously, Cooper Flag is playing better, but offense certainly is the name of the game when you get to the NBA. For pitching on MLB, and then you have to have your offense. Defense, as long as you have some league average guys out there, you can be able to be sufficient enough defensively. If you're trying to put a premium on defense and scuttling some offense in the name of going for that, tells me you're not exactly prioritizing the right things. This team was not good enough on the mound. Sure, defense was a bit of a problem, but you don't necessarily need to sacrifice offense in the name of defense. There are tons of middling options that they could have gone with. Let's see here. Try to catch up with a few more of these comments. Yeah, trying to work out some of the kinks with us being back live. Trying to get a new mic actually as well. There's a couple of nice mics I saw out there that we may end up going with. Do I like Nimmo pickup for Texas? Was I shocked by the deal? Shocked by them bringing back Nimmo? Yes. A little bit surprised that it took them as long as they did once I found out that they were talking about it for essentially 3 weeks. Pardon me. But as far as for the Rangers, this was all about them trimming some of the payroll this year. I do like the way the Rangers have identified a different way forward. We talked about the A swing in our last video months and months ago, about how, you know, the Rangers, among several other teams, were just prioritizing the A swing for players instead of approach, teaching them how to hit with 2 strikes. And I think the Rangers have finally realized their mistake in those areas. Now, does that mean that they're not going to necessarily solve all those issues? I don't think they'll solve every single one of their issues by this change in approach, but I do like this approach a whole lot better. You mentioned the name Luis Arraez. I think the Rangers would love to add him, and I just don't think the money is going to be there for him. If you guys paid attention to our video, or the name of our video anyway, we're going to talk quite a bit about some of the names that are out there at this winter meeting, some free agents that are out there, in addition to some trade candidates as well. One is completely being ignored. Before Marcus Semien was actually dealt, there were a couple of different articles mentioning Corey Seager, and that's the name I think you guys need to start paying attention to, especially on the eve of the winter meeting. So we'll see how things go over the next few months and so forth over the course of the MLB offseason, but I think we're going to see several out-of-nowhere trades that we were not expecting to see coming. Marcus Semien, I think we all thought was a possibility to get moved, but in a move that brought back Brendan Nimmo, completely out of left field. All right. Let's see. My Nimmo has been dealing with neck problems and plantar fasciitis for years. His body is cooked. He's still not exactly a negative force offensively like Marcus Semien has been. He is a little bit better than that. All right, let's try to get into some of the headlines out there first. Some of the big moves that we saw over the offseason so far. We mentioned the deal that brought Dylan Cease anyway to the Toronto Blue Jays. You'll notice right after that the article that says Blue Jays open to trading Jose Barrios. Well, no kidding. After you bring in another big-ticket item for your pitching staff, Jose Barrios hasn't exactly lived up to the payroll commitment that he commands. He's still a proficient starting pitcher, but I think the Blue Jays want to get a little bit better at his spot, especially for the dollars they have committed. If they can get somebody to take that contract and get something of value in return, I think the Blue Jays would go for it right now. I do think that the Blue Jays are going to be one of the most active teams in free agency this year. They already have announced a couple of different moves already, bringing in Cody Ponce and Dylan Cease. I would not be surprised to see them try to move on from from Jose Barrios. But as far as Bo Bichette, I'm not sure he comes back. I think they're going to try to solve that hole elsewhere. We did see the trade, as I mentioned, of Nimmo and Semien as some of the bigger moves. Free agency, and we saw a couple of different signings with Devin Williams going on a 3-year deal to the New York Mets. There has been some hand-wringing over whether this is the right move for them, if this represents a move for the Mets as a closer, or is this more of an 8th-inning setup guy in front of Edwin Diaz. I don't think necessarily the door is closed on Edwin Diaz coming back. I would be surprised, honestly, if he does go back to the Mets at this point. Just because I think that, bullpens, it's great when you have a couple of known commodities back there. But when you're investing the type of money that they are in Devin Williams and now the money that they're going to commit, or that would be required to be committed to Edwin Diaz, and the money they're now going to be spending on Marcus Semien. Of course, they're going to have the Alonso money coming off the books, and Marte, what are they going to do there to fill his spot in the lineup after a nice resurgent year for him? But this Mets team has a lot of different spots to fill, specifically in that rotation. I don't think they're going to go with just the young guys there, even though I think a couple of them should be in that starting rotation. Kodai Senga will be traded from that New York Mets team. Don't be surprised if he ends up in a team like the Padres or the Reds or a team like that. I would not be surprised if that happens at all. Some of the bigger names that we've seen mentioned around as well this offseason are going to be Brendan Donovan. We'll check in on an article here in just a minute about how he is one of the most likely names to move here this offseason as well. Melton, what do you think about Texas or about Verlander to Texas 1 year $9 as well as Jansen? I think that's a pipe dream. I think Verlander's looking to go elsewhere and try to win a World Series. Rangers are trying to pare down their payroll, and I don't think that necessarily leads you to win to a World Series this year. Doesn't mean they're necessarily going to be losers this season or end up with 60 wins. I just think that they're going to be very conscious of where their dollars go. I think they're going to look bigger fish for a starting pitcher, and I think they're going to try to fill that bullpen much like they did last year on the cheap. So I would expect for the bullpen maybe $20-25 million to be allocated there. That does not work for a guy like Kenley Jansen. Doesn't work in the rotation for Justin Verlander. But a name like Dylan Cease I thought was a legitimate name for the Rangers. Glad they didn't sign him, honestly, because he still doesn't necessarily have the innings or the ability to throw a great pitch outside of that. I believe it's the slider he throws. Slider or sinker, I can't remember which. But he struggles throwing the fastball for strikes. Blue Jays have good pitching staff there, pitching coach anyway, that can help him locate that fastball just a little bit better and get more value out of that arm that they're bringing in. But I thought he'd have been the wrong arm for Texas to go after. Yes, they have DeGrom. Yes, they have Eovaldi. Jack Leiter really took a step this year. He's probably a number 2 in anybody's rotation going into next year. And then they have Kumar Rocker and a number of other names that they can plug in at the 3, 4, 5 spot, depending on how injuries work out. But I thought they were going to be going for a bigger fish here in the winter meetings. So don't be surprised if they try to bring back a Merrill Kelly, if they try to go after one of the other big fish on the market or in the trade market as well. Verlander will be an Astro in 26. I wouldn't rule it out. Framber Valdez is one of the names that is out there right now, so we'll see what kind of money he commands. He's going to have to answer a lot of questions about whether or not that was intentional. Basically, when he threw at the catcher, kind of crossing up his catcher. A lot of front office people or former front office executives are kind of mentioning that in their offseason videos, as he's going to have to address his character concerns, his temperament on the mound before teams are comfortable spending, say, $30 million a season on him. He's still going to be a good one, but we'll see if his total dollar is impacted by that type of questions around him. We'll put it that way. Cronenworth, most likely. I think that's a good possibility for him to be moved. But we've been saying that for about 2 years now. With Arise now out and likely to sign elsewhere, wouldn't be a surprise to see them hold on to Cronenworth now that they have a hole there at second base that Cronenworth could easily fill. Let's see here. Molly to the Angels is a lock. I think it's a good possibility. He worked well with Mike Maddox coming off of another injury year. Angels looking for a short-term cost benefit in their rotation. Molly could be a nice one for them there. All right, so let's get into some of the other headliners that we've seen. One that kind of caught my eye from, I believe, yesterday anyway, the Nationals trading a relief pitcher, Jose Ferrer, to the Mariners in exchange for Harry Ford and another prospect. Would have loved to see this for the Texas Rangers as they're looking for another catcher to go behind Higashioka. I thought Harry Ford could have been a nice fit there, but ultimately he goes to the Nationals. Really loved the way the Nationals are using relief pitchers that are having some early success in their careers to try to build up their team. Didn't work out well with Nathaniel Lowe last year, but here they're buying a prospect in Harry Ford. Always could use another catcher prospect there in Washington. They've tried a couple of different options over this rebuild phase. Hasn't worked out quite to their liking. This is another bite at that apple at a very low cost for them. Mullins goes to the Rays. I'm not going to say he's a washed player, but he's certainly on the backside of his career, so he's going to be kind of a platoon guy, I would imagine, with the Tampa Bay Rays. And kind of an interesting trade. The Red Sox and Pirates trading Oviedo and Garcia in that deal. Pirates getting a really nice young outfielder in Garcia in that mix. I think that's a really A-plus trade for them. I think this is the type of trade they need to be making right now to try to improve their ceiling offensively. We saw last year, I saw a video anyway about how their fan fest when they got to spring training last year, how the Pirates front office was basically grilled about their inability to add the offseason around Paul Skeens and that pitching staff that they have. Well, this is a nice step in the right direction here, but they need to get some MLB players in there. So I'm not expecting them to sign an Alex Bregman or a Kyle Tucker, but somebody like an Adolis Garcia, somebody who has a good track record on them that might be able to recapture some success there in Pittsburgh. Not going to cost you a whole heck of a lot there. Maybe for an Adolis Garcia, you give him a 1 year with a player option, something like that, to try to see if he can recapture what he had in Texas a couple of years ago. But that'd be a nice addition to that team and kind of, helping build out that roster just a little bit better. But that's one team that's going to have to make some moves here offensively. We're going to see a lot of smaller market teams try to push forward and show that they're willing to spend because the collective bargaining agreement is being discussed right now. We're in all likelihood headed towards a lockout here at the end of next season. Unfortunately, it very well could lead to us missing baseball for an entire season. You might ask, well, why is that going to happen? Well, if the owners decide to push for a salary cap, I can guarantee you right now we will miss baseball for the entirety of next season, of the 27 season. But if they don't push the salary cap, if they just get shot down too profusely before we get to that point, there might be a way to where we can still see baseball in 27, but that's still a long way off. We're still in this offseason of 26, still with the winter meetings here. We shall see what happens. I'm not necessarily a proponent of the salary cap. I kind of like the way the NBA has a first apron, second apron kind of a thing going. MLB has something working a little bit better as of late with the luxury tax concerns, but obviously there are holes. It needs to be patched up. This deferred money situation has to be solved, and I do agree that while there is a certain disparity in sports, from the top of the league with the Dodgers spending and spending and spending, even money they don't have this year for money they may have down the line, they're still making money hand over fist and that kind of thing at the top of the league. Then you look at the other end of the spectrum, the teams like the Pittsburgh Pirates of the world, the Miami Marlins of the world. Those are teams that are never really going to spend at the top of the league. They're never even going to spend at the middle of the league. We're looking at teams that may spend 120 to 150 on a really big year, but most likely are going to be in that 115 range right now. And their biggest source of revenue outside of their individual sales is going to be revenue sharing. That's something that's going to have to be addressed as well. Now, I know these don't make topics for interesting conversation here, but the point is there are ways to do it outside of a salary cap in order to solve some of these issues. Tighten up some of those loopholes around deferred money. Tighten up money as far as the luxury tax thresholds and how much money you can go above certain thresholds there. You don't necessarily have to have a salary cap, but say if you tax them at 999%, or 15 times whatever the dollar is spent above, say, $400 million, no owner is going to be able to justify spending that much money. So for, say you spend $1 million over, you'd have to spend $1 billion over for that $1 million extra. That's kind of my point here. You can make it so unpalatable to where they don't spend, and it effectively works as a salary cap. Now, you can still spend that little extra over if you're just that close, but in effect, it would operate as a salary cap, and you'd have levels to it to where teams wouldn't even be getting close to it. But after a certain point, if you're at $500 million in payroll, that's when things can kind of curtail some of that extra spending on the top end of teams. To incentivize teams on the bottom end of the spectrum, maybe decrease the revenue sharing. Saw a couple of proposals out there where instead of taking 40 or splitting it up evenly and everybody getting equal shares, if you're not above a certain threshold, your payroll or your revenue sharing actually drops. You have to spend at a certain level to get that revenue sharing that you're wanting. So if you're the Pittsburgh Pirates, if you spend 110, you don't get your full market share. You get, say, half of whatever the market share revenue sharing would have been. If you spend, say, 140, or if you're around that league average or close to it, then you get your full boat. If you're well above that, maybe there's a way to incentivize teams to continue to spend by draft pick compensation. Whether you give them a compensation pick after the third round for spending a little bit more than other teams. That'd be one way to kind of help with kind of the disparity in payroll and allowing teams to spend out there. If you're a team that increases your payroll by a certain dollar amount every in a certain season, say you're at 110 one season and you jump to 170, hey, for increasing your payroll, we'll give you an extra pick in the third round. There's lots of ways to address this without having a set salary cap. Those are just a myriad of different ideas that you could throw out there at the winter meetings when you're discussing these things in the collective bargaining agreement discussions. But there's so many other options besides insisting upon a salary cap, because I think once you go to a salary cap, this is what the Players Association is going to do. They're going to put their laptops down. They're going to walk out of the building. They're going to stand in front of the cameras and say, hey, they decided to bring up a salary cap after so many different times. We've told them in no uncertain terms we are not interested, will not discuss, and will not entertain the thought of a discussion about discussing anything to do with the salary cap. They have instead decided to push forward in their attempt to issue a salary cap. We are very likely headed towards a lockout, and we are comfortable and prepared for said lockout. That's exactly what's going to happen if they push for this salary cap. So hopefully they come to a better understanding of where things are going to go before we get to the end of next season, because if they insist on it, I think we will see no baseball in 27. All right, enough salary cap, enough CBA discussion, enough talk about things that have already happened. It's winter meetings time. It's time to actually get into some of the discussion about what we can look forward to. So you comment here anyway about the Twins. Twins planning to keep Lopez, Ryan, and Buxton. I think you're going to posture that way even if you plan on selling them. So I would take all of that with a grain of salt. As far as Buxton goes, he's got the no trade. I think if Atlanta came calling, he would immediately agree to it. He's from Atlanta. I think there's a couple of other teams that if they came calling, he would waive that no trade clause for as well. I think you're going to have to trade Buxton first out of those three in order to get the maximum value from him. Because I think if you trade Ryan or if you trade Lopez first, I think Buxton's value goes down a little bit because then he's going to be demanding a trade at that point. He wants to be on a team that's competitive, and once they decide to sell off what's left of their productive players, they aren't going to be competitive there any longer. So the other two names that in there were Ryan and Lopez. I think both of those guys could be moving this offseason. I think one of them will be moved for sure. We saw almost get a deal done with the Boston Red Sox with Joe Ryan going there at the trade deadline. Ultimately did not happen, but I do think that would be the name out of the two of those guys. I think he's the more likely to command a better package in return. Welcome in, Andy. If you guys are new here, be sure to hit that like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And let's get into some of these trade headlines first, and then we'll break down some free agents first. Or after that, anyway. So this was an article, anyway, put out by ESPN. You've seen a lot of videos out there about these trade possibilities. Just want to kind of run through these names and point out a few names that they're missing here. A lot of talk about Tarek Skubal possibly getting moved from the Detroit Tigers. Chances of him moving, I would say next to zero. I think 10% is too high. I think the Tigers are going to move heaven and earth to try to keep him there. I don't think there's any reason to see him not sign an extension there this offseason either. So unless they decide to cut payroll, unless they're concerned about the offseason coming up, and just don't want to pay him for a year while we're not playing baseball in 27, if they view the salary cap as a likely, or salary cap discussions as a likely outcome, and they might be missing baseball, hey, how about we just not pay him for that year and not have to pay him the length of that contract after that, or once we get back to baseball after that. I just think there's too many reasons to keep him rather than move on from him. Of course, the entire league would be interested, but we shall see. Welcome in, Anthony. Appreciate you joining us once again. Who do I think the Mets will get? I think the Mets will be in discussions with Kyle Tucker. I think they're going to add one big bat. I don't think they add two, but I think they add one big bat, and I think they're going to try to add one of the aces available this offseason. I think Framber Valdez could very well be that pitcher. Talked about them being a possible fit for a trade last offseason, but we'll see if they go that direction right now. One of the biggest names I think will get moved is Ketel Marte. His name has been out there with the Diamondbacks, not necessarily making a press release and saying he's available, but in no uncertain terms pulling him off the market. I think that he's going to command a hefty return in a trade. I think the chances here of a trade by ESPN of 40% honestly are a little low. I think Ketel Marte will get moved. Now, let's see which teams they have here. We have the Pirates, Giants, Phillies, Mariners, Royals, Athletics, and Mets. One team they did not mention was a team that was mentioned today was the Boston Red Sox. Now, I think the Boston Red Sox, to me, would probably be the most likely out of all those teams outside of maybe the Giants. Giants made their push to try to add some payroll last year. I think this is the next piece that they could go after here. So I think if the Giants are adamant about adding a second baseman here, I think Ketel Marte could be the guy they go after. He's under control for 5 years, $91 million, and a player option after that. I'll put it this way. It's going to cost a heck of a return. If you're looking for a Ketel Marte in a trade, it's going to probably cost you a couple of top prospects and then some. But he is probably one of the best options, I think, that will get traded this offseason. Let's go ahead and check out the next name here. Freddie Peralta, final year of his deal with the Brewers. I think it's unlikely he gets moved. I think the Brewers are going to try to hold on to him at least until the trade deadline. I think it's unlikely they move him even at that point. I think they'll try to get the compensation pick for him if he leaves in free agency after the year. But I think they're going to try to continue to build off the strength of their team, which is that starting staff. Woodruff with the qualifying offer, Peralta, Mizrowski, Quinn Priester. That's a really solid foursome in that rotation. I think that's going to continue to be the strength of their team next season. As far as Tatis, I see a lot of people talking about Fernando Tatis in the comments. I just don't see him moving at all. I thought there was a chance that the front office could try to move him a couple of years ago when he was being a bit of a knucklehead, getting in a bunch of accidents on a motorcycle, the suspension, all those kinds of things, where the front office could have just said, heck, we don't want to deal with this headache anymore. We're no longer in that phase anymore. Tatis has grown up a little bit. You're seeing less and less headlines around him as far as the noisiness off the field. And I just don't think that the Padres anyway are looking to, while they might be looking to shed a little bit of salary like they have been each of the last 2 years, I don't necessarily think Tatis is where they're going to look to do it. He is, to me, their best player, or at least close to it, and I don't think there's any chance they move him. I think Merrill is still there, of course. They have a nice young group out there, and Tatis is part of that. I'm not moving him at all. Let's see. So what are your thoughts on my last comment? Anthony, let's see. What did you say here? Untouchable starter for the Marlins on the pitching staff is Perez. I mean, I would agree with that. What do you think we could get for Sandy, Edward, and Weathers? Well, there was a couple of reports anyway saying they're not looking to trade Sandy or Cabrera until we get to the trade deadline. I think that's a mistake. I think they should try to trade Cabrera now. As far as Weathers, I think they hold on to him. I don't think his value is necessarily high enough to warrant them moving on from him. Sandy Alcantara had a down year, but I think somebody sees some value in him as kind of a reclamation project. A team that's looking for a guy who can eat some innings here. Somebody who thinks a change of scenery would be the right team for him. So a team like the Angels, to me, speak volumes for a team like Sandy Alcantara. If the Dodgers come calling, watch out, because then maybe, just maybe, he could reclaim that Cy Young type of performance. But I do think Perez is probably the guy that's going to stay there with the Marlins. To me, they are another team that needs to add some payroll, like the Pirates this offseason, to kind of build up the argument from owner's side that these smaller market teams, these lower revenue teams, are willing to spend as they go into negotiations for the CBA. That way the player side has less to talk about those teams not being willing to spend. So Marlins, I think they will trade probably Cabrera, probably Alcantara, but Weathers I think stays, and I think they'll add some payroll this offseason as well. When will Cashman start making trades, John? Welcome in. Cruz, Eddie, welcome in as well. I do think Cashman will get the ball moving here at the winter meetings. Let's see here. As far as the Sox, do they move Duran? I think it's the strength of their team as far as the outfield, the plethora of outfielders that they do have. If they can get a infielder to kind of take over for Bregman, to take over at second base, to be an improvement over Story, I think that's their preference right now. They have a nice mix as far as starting pitching. I think they could use another arm as well. I would not rule out them revisiting the talks for Joe Ryan again. But I think unless they're getting that type of a return, some impact on the MLB side, not just prospects, then I think you could see a Duran move. But as of right now, I don't see it anytime soon, at least right now. All right. Let's see here. Try to catch up on a few more of these comments. Let's get these winter meetings off, absolutely. Going to have some Hall of Fame announcements, I believe, to kick off the winter meetings like they usually do around 7 o'clock. We'll be live with you guys till around 5:30 or so. Kind of get a nice dinner break, go out and see the family, and then in the evening around probably 9-ish, we'll be back with kind of the Hall of Fame fallout, and we'll also get into some of the, hopefully we get a signing or two to kind of kick off the winter meetings. Usually we get one or two small ones to kind of get things going. But hopefully by then we have some moves at that point. All right, keep going down this list here. Hunter Green, 10% for the Reds. Unlikely. I think he's probably to me, the ace of this staff. They have a lot of good arms there. Unless they're getting a difference-making bat, I just don't see it. They could use some more bullpen arms for me, but you're not trading a number one type of starter or a guy who could be a number one on a World Series caliber team like Hunter Green can be. But he hasn't necessarily developed that all the way there yet. He's still a really superior pitcher, though, and I'm not trading him away for nothing right now. We talked about Buxton already. I think the chances of him getting moved, once they start moving some of those players, I think the chances go to 100. But right now, I'll agree, ESPN around 33%, because if Minnesota doesn't move on from those players, then I think Buxton does stay. Best fit, to me, speaks to the teams that speak to me are going to be the Braves. I think the Mets are going to be in there if they do get him moved. Joe Ryan, number 6, I think there's a good chance he moves. Look at Boston as the most likely fit there. They also mentioned the Mets, Orioles. Rangers, unlikely because they're trying to pare down payroll. I don't necessarily think they have the roster flexibility on the prospect side to make a move like that happen either. Who are we trading Walcott for? I'm not trading Walcott for anything. I'm holding on to Walcott and having him come up around the trade deadline and be an impact player for the Rangers after that point. Will the Cubs add a third baseman? Yes, they will. Chris, welcome in. Appreciate you joining us. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. We'll be live every single evening, every single weekday anyway, throughout the MLB offseason and some on the weekends as well. Could the Cubs figure out how to bring in Suarez, the trifecta? I doubt it. I do think they end up with probably one of those guys. My bet would probably be on Eugenio Suarez. I think they'll fall short of Bregman. I think they'll fall short of Tucker. They've shown their lack of willingness to spend at the top levels in baseball. What do you think the Marlins would have to do to give up for Cronenworth? Honestly, maybe a starter. We could do a trade like that here in just a little bit. What do you see the Yankees doing at the winter meetings? I think they're going to try to solve some of their offensive issues. I think Kyle Tucker probably gets done soon. The question is, will it be at the winter meetings or not? I'm hopeful, just like all of you, that Tucker does sign at the winter meetings. But, I think his market is just beginning to develop still. I think we're going to be waiting on him for a minute. Pete Alonso, I don't think is going to go there. I think with Bellinger being out there, I think there's a good chance that he could be one of the bigger bats that the Yankees add here, or at least still are relying on going into next season. To me, that would be a bit of a miss for them. I think they need to go a little bit bigger game hunting when it comes to offense. The loss of Soto last year, they never fully were able to fulfill. And I think that's part of the reason why they didn't get to the series and win it. So we'll see. Walcott for Marte, I would not do that at all. Sebastian Walcott, to me, I would not give up if I'm the Rangers. Now, if you're talking about bringing in Ketel Marte to be your second baseman, I mean, he does kill the Rangers. I think he hits really well in the ballpark there. I would love to bring him in as a second baseman. The contract is small, but it's going to cost you a pretty penny. And I'm not giving up Walcott for him, which means you're going to have to give up a plethora of players for him, and I'm just not willing to do so. You'd probably have to give up, Carter. You'd have to give up Rocker. You might have to give up Young as well. That doesn't sound like a whole lot for Marte, but that means you're still not there for Marte. So we shall see. Sean, what was your question about the Cubs? I thought I already answered your question a couple of different times. Will the Cubs add a third baseman? Yes, I said Suarez. Okay. Yamamoto broke Toronto. That's why we're going why you're going nuclear this offseason. I will say Yamamoto is one heck of a pitcher. Certainly demonstrated that in the series. Thank you for the like. Appreciate that. Sandia for Crony straight up. Possibly. I'd have to look at the value, but it sounds reasonably close. Dale Murphy and Jeff Kent to the Hall. I'll put it this way. I'm just hoping we get more than one guy going into the Hall of Fame. There's so many guys, to me, that are deserving this year. You already know my discussions about Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens and all the other PED guys. At this point, there's so many guys that are already in. I'm for basically putting an era of baseball, putting an asterisk in front of an entire era of baseball, saying baseball did not drug test during this period of time. Sure, it was against the law, but it was not against the laws of baseball. Not even the rules of baseball wasn't necessarily drug tested for to get these things taken care of. And as a result, it resulted in the most egregious violation of the numbers side of baseball that there could possibly be because of the prevalence of steroids and blah, blah, blah. Basically, during this period of time, people were known to be using steroids. Whether they were or not is not for us to decide, but for us to decide how the game was played during that period of time. These were the best players of that era, and this era deserves to be represented in the Baseball Hall of Fame. End of discussion. Now, whether or not one guy did use more or didn't use more, I don't care. All right. Ranger signing Framber would fit. What do you think? I don't necessarily like Framber to the Rangers. I think he'd be an interesting signing, but there's an even more egregious one to me that I'm toying with in my mind. If you guys remember during the 2023 season when the Rangers won the World Series, the Rangers lost the division on the last day of the season. Astros Alex Bregman goes up to the mic and says, "Hey, we might have won it all season long, but we're the guys standing here at the end." Well, said something to that effect anyway. Corey Seager, after winning the World Series, basically went right back at it. Bregman saying, yeah, we didn't win the division, but hey, we got a World Series. So just kind of keep that in mind for where we're going to end this video on here, because I can see a very interesting thing happening with the Rangers here in just a little bit. Murakami to the Cubs, that might be interesting. Murakami anywhere, I think, is going to be an interesting signing. I'm curious if he goes to one of the New York teams or if he goes to a different market. I don't think he goes to the Dodgers, but I think New York is probably the most likely for Murakami at this point. I do think, what's his name, Tatiana Imani, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, but he's certainly not going to the Dodgers after the comments he made recently as well. All right, let's try to check out a few more of these names here. Duran, chance of getting traded 50%. If they can get an impactful player to their big league club, I would agree there. Tigers, Royals, Giants, Pirates, Phillies, Mets, Reds, and Diamondbacks as fits here. Duran to the Diamondbacks as part of a return for Ketel Marte could make some sense. To the Tigers, I think they could use another nice outfielder there. Royals, he does seem their type of player. Do they have the prospects or the talent on the MLB side to get that deal done? I question. Giants, they need somebody like that in their outfield alignment. Do they have the pieces to get it done? If they're including Eldridge in that deal, that could be a possibility there. But I think those would be the most likely teams. Pirates, I don't think they're going to get that type of a player. Phillies, I don't see them going after him either. Mets, they have some decent prospects that could get it done, but I don't think they're giving anything up on the major league side that gets the deal anywhere close to getting done. Reds, I doubt as well. Pablo Lopez, I think every team should be calling about on him because his wear and tear last year was down because of the injury, obviously. Now, question marks about the injury. How is he healed? All those kinds of things got to come into play as well. But to me, this is the type of pitcher that could be a number 2 in a World Series type of rotation. So, teams that they mentioned, Mets, Orioles, Giants, Astros, Padres. To me, if I'm the Mets, this is probably one of the first names I go for here. Welcome in, Mark. Appreciate you joining us once again. To me, I think the Mets, this is the perfect type of pitcher for them. This would be the first of probably 2 to 3 starters that they would need to bring in. But to me, that would be the pitcher I would really go for if I'm the Mets on the trade front. Mackenzie Gore, Nationals. We talked about him at the trade deadline. They mentioned the Yankees, Orioles, Rangers, Giants, and Diamondbacks as fits. The Rangers have had interest in him. I could see it happening, but I don't necessarily think they're going to pay the price to get him in. Yankees already have a nice rotation as well. I think they're looking to upgrade their offense more than their rotation at this point. Giants could be an interesting fit. They had a nice rotation last year, but are going to have some holes in the back end of it. Maybe this is the finishing piece for that rotation, and then fix their needs offensively in free agency. But this is a player I don't necessarily see a perfect fit for, at least right now, at least for the Washington Nationals. One team that's going to spend aggressively this offseason that nobody's really mentioning, the Washington Nationals. Been very friendly with Scott Boras clients in the past. We're going to see a bunch of those guys kind of hanging out there as they usually are as we get to after the winter meetings. And don't be surprised if the Nationals scoop up 1 or 2 of those types of players. Okamoto to the Rangers, I think that's one of the more likely options. to go to the Rangers this offseason. I do like that one there. Skip loves Luis Arraez. He does fit the philosophy there. I just don't think they're going to pay the price to bring in Luis Arraez. I think he's going to get paid better elsewhere for teams that need a little bit more offense as well. Rangers certainly have a fit for him at second base if they want to go there, but we shall see. All right, Stephen Kwan. I think there was a good chance of him getting traded during the season last year to the Dodgers. Don't be surprised if they revisit those discussions. Remember, they were looking to bring in two different players from the Guardians at the deadline. They were looking at a reliever, Clase, and at Kwan, obviously Clase, persona non grata right now. But with Kwan, I still think there's a good chance that the Dodgers kick the tires on that one again. Any hitters that are coming out of Asia this year make sense for the Marlins, or do you think they stay away from the posting system? Okamoto kind of fits that the pricing scale where I believe the Marlins would be looking to pay. Don't be surprised if they're a team that jumps out there once again for a guy like Luis Arraez as a short-term deal to kind of up their payroll a little bit to satisfy the Players Association to show them that they are committed to continuing to increase their payroll there. Nats probably signed Marcell Ozuna 2 for $32. It ain't going to be something like that. It's going to be much bigger. So think of a player that's on the back nine of their career, aging a little bit, that's around 31, 32, that's going to still command a hefty payday. That's the type of player where they will probably bring in. Not saying it's the right player for them, but it's what's going to happen. And then they'll probably get one really nice piece as well to go along with it. The Nationals are going to be a surprise big spender this season. Do you see the Mets trading for Skubal? I don't see anybody trading for Skubal, including the Mets. I got a feeling Amaya ends up with the Padres, so that's a good possibility. Let's see here. Let's keep going down this list. Brendan Donovan. To me, this is one of the bigger names that will likely get traded. There are several teams that are kicking the tires on him. I think he is a cheaper acquisition cost than Ketel Marte, but can give you a very similar impact. Maybe not necessarily with power, but with on-base percentage, with his versatility in the field. I think this is the type of player that's a little bit more attainable for a lot of teams out there. So don't be surprised for a number of different teams to be connected with him. That's why you see a laundry list of teams here. Dodgers, Mariners, Yankees, Red Sox, Pirates, Giants, Royals, Guardians, add the Rangers, add the Mets to that list. Pretty much any team in need of offensive help this offseason should be making a call to the St. Louis Cardinals. They did trade away Sonny Gray to the Boston Red Sox already, so I think the Cardinals are open for business, and I think Donovan very likely could get moved if they can get the right price. Another team that's been connected in the past has been the Houston Astros, like you mentioned there, Heel. I think there's a good chance that the Astros could be the team for him ultimately. They seem to value this type of versatile player, second base, third base, outfield mix type of a player like Brendan Donovan, like Paredes, players like that, Dubon in years past. I think this could be a nice piece for them, the next solid middle infield option for them. C.J. Abrams with the Nationals. I don't think there's going to be much of a market for him. I think teams that need a shortstop, the market is very slim out there for free agents. So if you're looking the trade market, maybe you go after C.J. Abrams. I just don't think the value is really there to justify you thinking he's the answer at a position. Now, if you're thinking of him as maybe a one-year stopgap, and if he has a great year, fantastic. But I don't see C.J. Abrams as the answer for any of these teams. Looking specifically at the Atlanta Braves, the team that I would say needs the biggest improvement at shortstop right now, or has the biggest hole at shortstop. We've talked about them possibly going after Bo Bichette there as a shortstop there. I don't think they're necessarily in the market for him, but I do think they're looking for shortstop, and I think they are going to be looking in the trade market. I just don't think in the division to C.J. Abrams is the answer they're going to end up with. But they mentioned Pirates, Giants, Royals, and Guardians. You don't even see the Braves there. Pirates, this could be the type of acquisition they make. I could see that happening. Giants, I don't think they do that. Royals could be the type of player that they target, speed, on base percentage. Might be an interesting fit. Same for the Guardians. Wilyer Abreu, same kind of thought process here with Duran. I think if they're going to move one of the guys, I don't think the other one is going to get moved. I think Roman Anthony is there to stay, and I think they keep one of those two guys. Now, they had a great year out of, what was the other guy's name? Their fourth outfielder. I forget his name. Rafaela? He had a great year last year, and I think they keep one of those two other outfielders. I just don't think they keep both by end of next season, and I think whichever one gets them a return that helps them at the major league level most is the way they go. They mentioned Tigers, Giants, Pirates. You'll notice in kind of a theme here of teams that are targeting certain types of players. Tigers seem like they could go the trade route here based off of what these insiders are putting for these teams. Chris Bubik for the Royals after his injury anyway. It was a possibility that he could have been moved. Ultimately was not due to the injury. I think he could get moved for some offense here. Cole Ragans is not out of the question for a possibility to be traded. I think they could trade one of those guys in the name of adding some offense, so don't be surprised there. Yandy Diaz has seen his name bandied about probably, I don't know, the last 3 years now. Chances of him being traded according to this article, 25%? Maybe. I mean, they've held on to him this long. He doesn't offer much from defense, doesn't offer much from base running. He's consistent at the plate. He was better-ish last year, I guess I will say. Club option. If you're looking for first base help, Yandy Diaz certainly could be an option. I just think he provides too much value for the cost that he is for the Rays, and so I think he ultimately stays there. Justin, Russ, welcome in. Do I think Schwarber to the Reds? I don't. I think Schwarber probably ends up back with Philadelphia. If he doesn't end up there, probably a big market team. I just don't see Cincinnati playing at the level necessary for Kyle Schwarber. Do you see the Red Sox trading for Marte? I think it's a possibility. I think Duran would probably have to be the part of the return there. If you include Duran going back the other way and maybe a couple other pieces, I could see Marte going to the Red Sox. We shall see. Yandy to the Rangers would make sense for DH first base. They don't really need another first base DH type, though. They have like 3 of those guys already. And there are so many of those guys on the market that they don't necessarily need to trade for it. I mean, they already have Jock Peterson. Obviously, you're not going to be, cutting him and just letting him walk for nothing. But if they could trade him and eat, say, $13 million of that deal, and say if another team was willing to eat 5, I think the Rangers would offload him off of their books right now. But I don't think that another team out there is even willing to eat $5 million of Jock Peterson's salary. So, until then, you have him, you have Jake Berger, you have Cody Freeman, you have Ezekiel Duran, you have Josh Smith, all of those guys kind of in that same mix at that first base DH spot. I can't remember if Rowdy Tellez is still a part of the team. I'm guessing not, but he could be an easy vet that kind of fills into that type of role. Now, am I saying that any of those options are better than Yandy Diaz? No, but I am saying instead of paying an extra $12 million for a Yandy Diaz, you're going to have to offload one of those guys first in order for it to make some sense. Breo needs to return to Houston. I think he'd be a great fit for Houston. Do I think that he would go there? No, I don't think Houston would be willing to part with anything that the Red Sox need on the major league level in order to get that type of deal signed. You're saying that Tucker just got signed by the Blue Jays? I doubt it. I didn't see anything go off on my phone. I think you're just messing with me, Russ. Uriel Rodriguez works. I mean, I would do that right now. Rays interested in Zach Little? I mean, after trading him, or trying to trade him for, the last 2 years, now they're interested in bringing him back. I mean, he was good for them. All right, let's keep going down this list here. I want to get to some of the trade talk and some free agency speculation as well. 16, Wilson Contreras has some no-trade protection there. Unlikely that he gets moved, but he's at least with Sonny Gray moving on and likely Nolan Arenado moving on. There's at least a chance Contreras moves. I just don't think another team's necessarily willing to take on the contract for the production that you're going to get. So I think he stays there. Brendan Lau, I think there's a better chance he moves than Yandy Diaz. I do think Lau has a little extra pop at the second base spot, which has a lot more needs out there. Teams that need a second baseman. Red Sox could be a fit type, something there. They mentioned teams like the Pirates, Marlins, Padres, Giants, Royals, Guardians, and Mariners. Mariners would be an interesting fit. They have a young guy there already that they like, but maybe they want to go with more of a veteran. We shall see. Is the Tucker deal true? No, it's not true. We just checked. All right, Twist Your Dreams, give me a guess on Mets opening day outfield. Soto. I'll say one of the kids. I think they're going to try to have one of the kids out there in the outfield. And then, do I say Tucker? Honestly, I'm not sure. I think Tucker probably signs elsewhere. I'll say Soto, a defensive center fielder, and one of the kids in right. I don't necessarily think they go big payroll there in the outfield. All right, let's keep this thing going. Cabrera, this is one guy I think that should be moved this offseason. Teams they mentioned are the Yankees, Orioles, Giants, Astros, Diamondbacks, Padres, Rays. Add about half the league to that list as well. I think he's a really good number 3 type starter. The question is, are you going to be able to finally pry him out of Miami? I think this is the year where you could get it done. Um, what could it cost you? A couple of decent offensive pieces, something that raises the floor there for Miami. I think could be the way they go. Miami's going to have to figure out what they're going to do behind the plate as well. They have 3 catchers right now on their roster. I think they'll trade one of those guys. But I think Cabrera is the more likely of those arms to be moved right now, followed by Alcantara, kind of 1A, 1B. Mitch Keller, they've talked about the trade possibility there. I think if this brings in a decent bat, I think Keller could be the way to go. They mentioned the Rangers, Astros, Angels, Athletics, and Mets. I would not be surprised if this is the type of arm that Angels target here. Only 3 years on the deal, $55 million left. I think this could be the reliable innings eater type of player that they've been targeting each of the past couple of off seasons. So don't be surprised if we see a Mitch Keller trade to the Angels. I think that would be a perfect fit for them. Same thing goes for the A's. Kind of think of the Luis Severino, Jeffrey Springs types of trades that they did, signing/trades that they did last year. This is that type of a move for them. Now you're going to have to give up some offense back to the Pirates. Whichever team is willing to do that most satisfactorily at the major league level, not necessarily with prospects, but with major league talent going back to Pittsburgh, I could certainly see that happening as well. 20, Cronenworth, we talked quite a bit about him already. I think if he brings you back a decent starter, kind of a number 4 type starter in your rotation, I think that deal gets done. I think they have other options that they could utilize at second base or even go into free agency. Heck, they could even bring back Luis Arraez. Adele to Keller deal, I could see that possibility. Do you see Goldschmidt to the D-backs on a 1-year type of thing? Honestly, no. I think Goldschmidt probably stays in one of the big markets and tries to chase a series. I don't think he goes back to the D-backs because they have some long-term answers that they want to see if they work there. Not necessarily saying that Goldschmidt's not the better player, but I am saying that they've got other options that they prefer, whether that be better for this season or not. I think is irrelevant. I think it's about Goldschmidt wanting to stay in a World Series environment on one of the coasts, most likely, and we'll see what happens there. I think the Yankees would be lucky to have him back again, but we'll see. Is Imanaga available? I've seen a couple of different articles out there that he is. For me, if I'm the Cubs, he's one of the starters I hold on to right now. You had a deficiency of starting pitching last year. That's part of the reason why your all-in push last year, the trade that you made for Kyle Tucker, did not work out in your favor. All right, let's keep this thing going. Luis Robert, I think this trade hopefully gets done. Maybe this is the trade that the Mets finally get done. Gets their center fielder. Maybe the Giants get this deal done. But a declining player who's at least steadied himself as far as his value right now. Money no longer is seen as the hugest albatross as far as trying to acquire him. Inability to stay on the field, those types of questions are starting to dissipate a little bit. But I think getting his money off the books for the White Sox in whatever capacity that may be is the best course of action there. We've talked quite a bit about Sandy Alcantara. The number of teams could be interested there. They mentioned the Orioles, Rangers, Giants, Astros, Angels as fits. I don't see the Rangers as a fit at all. Astros, maybe. Giants as a number 4 starter, possibly. Orioles, I doubt. Angels, possibly. So I'd probably say out of all those teams, the most likely would probably be the Giants and then the Angels. I don't necessarily buy any of those other teams. Now, I do buy other teams more. Like if the Padres were to come calling, if the Dodgers were to come calling, maybe even the Chicago Cubs before I buy teams like the Rangers or Orioles there. It's, 3 ERA, yeah. If he gets to that level, I'd love to have him, but I doubt it. Mets are certainly going to be trading McNeil. I will agree with you there. Uh, Interesting name there. I like that one. All right. Brady, let's see here. From the Reds, just got traded anyway from the Royals last year. They mentioned the Orioles, Rangers, Giants, Astros, Padres, and Rays. Rays ain't trying to acquire Singer. Padres, possibly. Astros, no. Giants, doubtful. Rangers, doubtful. Orioles, doubtful. So if I'm going with those teams, I'd probably say the Padres most likely, just because their needs in starting staff, with Cease going away and King likely out the door. I think he could be a nice stopgap starter for them. Alec Boehm, 50% chance. This would be a way for them to kind of free up some payroll, or if they were to add Alex Bregman, I think they would make this move. I seriously doubt they move him, though. I think the more likely option is that they stick with what they've got, because if you look at their books, they don't have a whole lot of flexibility last year. They didn't have a whole lot of flexibility going into the offseason this year. Unlikely, but I'll say that if a team is looking for offense, he could provide some. He's been better than over the last couple of years. 1 year left to control, $10 million. Acquisition cost isn't going to be very high. Brewers, I think that could make some sense. Mariners, no. Pirates, I think that'd be a 1 year option for them, but is that really going to be enough for the Pirates to give up on? Whatever they have to give to get Boehm? I doubt it. Now, if Keller was going back the other way, could be interesting, but the Phillies aren't looking to take on that much more salary for a number 4 type starter for them. Angels, I mean, they need somebody to take over there at third base with Rendon finally getting resolved over there at third. Somebody next to Neto would be good, so maybe that could be a nice fit there. And then Jeff McNeil, 80%. Go ahead and change that to 100 with Marcus Semien coming into town. So maybe McNeil is the bat that goes to the Pirates to kind of help out offensively. He's got $15 million on his deal. He has an option for 27. Utility player type. He could be a type of piece that goes to the Pirates there. They mentioned a bunch of other names that could be moved. Nolan Arenado, Castellanos, Tristan Casas, Jason Dominguez. Dominguez ain't getting moved. Let's be clear about that. Freeland, nobody wants any of the Rockies' arms. Let's be clear about that as well. Cardinals, I think, are open for business, so don't be surprised about any number of names that could be coming out of there. Jeffers, with the dearth of catching ability out there right now, I think he could be a name that gets moved. Don't be surprised if the Rangers are a team that comes calling for Ryan Jeffers. Jake Myers, center fielder for the Astros, could be an option, but teams have called on him before. Astros have tried giving him away before. Not necessarily a consequential player to be moved to me. Ryan Mountcastle has been a name that's been out there each of the past couple of years. Nothing's happened as of yet. Not necessarily a great option on the trade block either. Again, more Cardinals. Kodai Senga will be moved. I think a team like the Reds or a smaller market team that needs some starting pitching that struggles to get it, maybe even the Minnesota Twins, that he could be part of the return in exchange for Pablo Lopez. That would be an interesting move there. They at least fill their rotation with Senga and whatever other prospects they get in that deal. Not a bad trade idea. Severino for the A's, we talked about that one at the trade deadline. Even after they made that deal, I thought he was kind of a salary filler there for them more than anything else, just to appease the Players Association. Vientos, we talked about him quite a bit. Christian Walker, up and down year with the Astros anyway. I wouldn't be surprised if they're able to get off of his money, that the Astros do so. Not necessarily saying he's a negative asset for the Astros, but that the Astros try to manage things a little bit differently financially than a lot of other teams out there. They try to be very competitive, and so they try to maximize the value of every dollar. Maybe they see the money that they've allocated to Christian Walker better spent in other ways. That would be a possibility there. Thomas, if they're able to upgrade their outfield, I'm sure they would be happy to part with a defense first type of player in Alec Thomas, who still has some potential left at the plate. Now, we'll kind of end our video here before the 6 o'clock hour. Got dinner with the folks here in just a minute, but there's one big topic that I haven't touched on yet, and that's going to be the trade nobody has been talking about since the Marcus Semien deal went through, and that's Corey Seager. You guys might be saying, well, isn't he injured? Isn't he on a huge contract? Well, I'm also going to give you a couple of different things. One, he's still one of the best graded defensive shortstops in the game. Yes, the big guy that everybody thought would age poorly at shortstop is aging gracefully at the position so far. And yes, he's had a bunch of soft tissue injuries over the past couple of years. But even with that being the case, he still grades out as one of the best defensively at the position. Oh, and that's not even his best attribute. The bat is still the bat. There is a massive difference for the Rangers when he is in the lineup versus when he is not. Now, of course, you have to take into account the injuries and the money that's owed to him, but he's still 31 years old. This is probably the last good year that for the Rangers if you're trying to get out of that contract before his contract really starts to take a bit of a nosedive to me. Because if the soft tissue injuries crop up for another year, I think his value certainly plummets even further. But the value is still there with the glove. The value is certainly still there with the bat. And I think this is the difference-making type of a move that a team like the Yankees, a team like the Dodgers, a team like the Braves could make that could propel them to the top in Major League Baseball. To me, this is one of the difference-making pieces nobody's talking about because there's not a single difference maker available at the shortstop position. If Corey Seager gets moved this offseason, he's the single biggest addition at shortstop any team could make this season. There's a couple of different teams to me that make a lot of sense here. Red Sox, I doubt, but I've heard them in connection there. The most likely teams to me are the three I mentioned. The Yankees, the Dodgers, and the Atlanta Braves. Atlanta Braves, they have said time and time again this offseason, they're going to be a top 5 payroll team. So don't worry about them blowing past the luxury tax threshold this season. And for a player like Corey Seager, I think that'd be exactly the type of player they would make that adjustment for. Now, to me, the Braves still need to add starting pitching, and more starting pitching. That's where things begin and end for me for the Atlanta Braves. But they seem adamant about fixing their issues at shortstop. They tried by bringing in Jurickson Profar last year. They tried to bring in the trade candidate. Trying to remember his name anyway. Trying to remember his name. Either way, didn't work out either, and he opted to go into free agency anyway. They tried to with Dubon now. I think the biggest, most durable, most available solution to them would be Corey Seager. Now, of course, you have a bunch of guys that can backfill the position as well in times that he does miss. Jurickson Profar could fill in for a couple of weeks when he misses it with a hamstring strain. If he has to miss more than a month, I think you've got more than enough utility type of players. But you don't necessarily have the linchpin in your lineup that is Corey Seager. Now, of course, they have tons of money already allocated on this roster to a bunch of position players. Are they really willing to allocate another $30+ million for another 6 years to a guy in Corey Seager? I think that still is a question that would need to be answered there in Atlanta. Dodgers obviously have no issues with adding payroll. Of course, they would prefer to defer some of that money. So maybe there's a way that they could offset some salary this season by taking on one of those relievers that didn't work last year. Texas, I'm sure, would love to add one reliever back there if they can offload the long-term salary of Corey Seager and still manage to get a little bit better around the periphery of the team. I think that's an argument for the Rangers team that you could make this year, much like the Yankees did after they lost Soto last year. Hey, we're going to add to our starting rotation. We're going to add to our bullpen. We're going to add a couple of different hitters to our lineup because we no longer have that big payroll commitment in Juan Soto. So we're going to add around the edges here. The Rangers can make a similar argument. If they're somehow able to offload, say, of the $31 million that's owed annually to Corey Seager, if they were to bring back a player, say like a Sean Murphy, as far as solving their second catcher issue there. Not saying Murphy's a good option as their second catcher, but that would be one way to offset a little bit of the money for Atlanta to make it worth it to them, and then add a couple of good starting pitching prospects from the Braves, who have some good options in the lower levels of the minors, but are nowhere near ready to be at the major league level. We saw them trying to bring up AA guys at the end of last year. 3 or 4 different AA guys just didn't work out. They tried bringing in guys who were DFA'd by multiple teams last year. It didn't work out either, obviously. They need to add starting pitching. But if they added their shortstop, which is something they've been looking for each of the past 2 years, this would be the player. This would be the difference-making piece for them. And then I mentioned the Yankees. Why do I say the Yankees? I think everybody would agree Corey Seager was a massive upgrade over Volpe at shortstop. Of course, the money commitment would be a thing. Volpe would probably have to be included in this deal going back to Texas. I'm not saying Texas would like Volpe coming back. Maybe they could route him to another team. But Corey Seager would certainly upgrade the offense and give them another aircraft carrier to go along with Aaron Judge. Can you imagine Aaron Judge and Corey Seager hitting 2-3 in that lineup? that certainly would be a World Series contending team on the American League side, and certainly be an upgrade over whatever they could do in free agency this year from an offensive standpoint. You bring in Kyle Tucker, he still would be hitting fourth in a lineup that featured Seager and Aaron Judge. So we'll see what happens during this offseason. I would not be surprised if Texas were able to find a way to offload the salary of Corey Seager. The Texas Rangers are just too quiet right now, is part of the reason why I believe this is something that could happen. Texas has been very good as far as moving early in free agency, especially in the trade window. We saw that over the last couple of years now with DeGrom and so forth coming to Texas. We see it already this offseason with Marcus Semien. Things have been quiet now since that Marcus Semien trade. Something is going to be coming down the pike here for Texas. They are going to be aggressive in trying to add some payroll to that starting staff. And if they're going to add payroll in the starting pitching department, they're probably going to have to offload somewhere else. We mentioned Jock Peterson. He has zero trade value. If you're lucky, maybe you save $5 million in a deal there. But I think the most likely way for them to save some money and still retain some type of a return would be Corey Seager. I'm not advocating for him to move, but I am saying if you're trying to pare down the payroll, you could do worse than bringing back whatever the return is for what you could get for Corey Seager. So we shall see. I would not be surprised if we see Corey Seager's name mentioned over the next 48, 72 hours at the winter meetings as far as one of the names that's really getting some traction in trade talks. The three teams that I mentioned could be the three teams that would be interesting fits there, but we shall see. A lot of teams need upgrades at shortstops. There's nobody out there that can really solve those needs. That's why Corey Seager, to me, if he was on the market, could still command a heck of a return for Texas, even with the injury and salary concerns around the player. Alrighty, appreciate you guys joining us. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. We will be live again this evening, probably around 9 o'clock, recapping the latest from around the winter meetings as we get the Hall of Fame announcements of who's going to be in, all those kinds of things. Alex, welcome in. Finn, welcome in. What time do the winter meetings start? I believe they're actually starting right now, as we speak anyway. Who are the Cubs going to get? I would say they're probably going to get a third baseman. I'm going to go ahead and earmark Suarez there because it seems like the third guy down is who they might be able to afford financially, and he's the guy who had a big year last year, and they might be able to get him to a friendlier contract based off of how the year ended for him. But trade might be active. I do not think signing will be big as a lockout next year is a guarantee. I do think that we likely will be heading towards a lockout next year with the salary cap discussions. We mentioned that earlier in our video, but hopefully we don't get to that point. I just think it's inevitable, though, at this point, but we shall see. If I'm trading Seager for young players, I'm looking at Boston or Pirates, maybe for O'Neill Cruz or somewhere else. I just don't think the Pirates would be willing to take on a player like that. Boston, I say, is an interesting fit because the players that they have could be interesting fits. I thought before the trade with the Pirates that sent Garcia to the Pirates, I thought that would be an interesting piece in a Corey Seager trade, but I still doubt that the Red Sox would make that type of a move. I think they're looking bigger fish as far as the second base position. I think they're looking at the starting rotation still, and I still think they're going to try to do something over there at third base with Alex Bregman. We shall see. The last bit I forgot to mention here is, remember that 2023, Bregman after winning the division, Seager after winning the World Series, they're kind of back and forth there. Wouldn't it be interesting if the Rangers were to offload the salary of Corey Seager? Let me show you what I've kind of worked up. This is just a rough sketch. I don't necessarily like this trade, but if they did, say a trade to the Braves, Corey Seager, Josh Young, why his value is at 20 on this site, heavens knows. He is not a 20 surplus player if you look at the Texas Rangers, but for argument's sake, and then you got Sean Murphy on the other side. I wouldn't do that if I'm Texas. But even if you took him out, you could make an argument, or even if you took out Austin Riley and just went with young players, that if you offloaded Corey Seager, the money that you save on him with the young guys you bring back and spend it on Alex Bregman and solve your hole over there at third base could be very interesting. Or even give Alex Bregman his natural position back at shortstop. Would I do it as a Rangers fan? No. Would I do it as a front office executive? And if Bregman is willing to take a discounted long-term deal to come to Texas, we shall see. Say if Bregman's willing to sign, say, a 7-year deal for, I don't know, $175, $160 million. If he's willing to do something like that, I think you sign him on the dotted line. But we shall see. Welcome in, Vida. Appreciate you joining us once again. Hayden, welcome in. Appreciate you joining us. Johnny, appreciate you joining us as well. Robert, welcome back. Seager to the Cubs for Matt Shaw and prospects. Not bad. I just don't see the Cubs taking on that long-term of a commitment. I think they're looking to save a little bit more money long-term. I think that's going to be their issue this offseason is when they try to sign these guys that they're not willing to go to the payroll numbers that a lot of these other teams are. And I certainly don't think they're going to be doing it and signing up for it via trade either. I don't think necessarily Matt Shaw would interest the Rangers in that deal either. Dodgers for Seager with Teoscar Hernandez and rushing deal would make a lot of sense. That's kind of where my thought was as far as Dalton Rushing coming back and being that second catcher there. He started to really pick things up in the month of September last year. Told you guys he'd be a Rookie of the Year candidate. Really didn't live up to that until the final month of the season. I think if he's your second catcher there in Texas and kind of a corner outfielder at times, which he's shown the ability to do in the minors, not necessarily too well at the majors, but he can still hold it down if necessary. But he could be a bat that would be in the realm of what Texas is looking to do offensively. Plus, you offload the salary, maybe even bring back Scott or somebody else from that bullpen to take off a little bit of the money for this season, at least from the Dodgers. You help out your bullpen, and hopefully he can regain some value back there. There's a lot of different incarnations of a Seager deal with a lot of these different teams that are out there, but I think the three most likely teams that if we do see Seager's name thrown out there are going to be the Atlanta Braves, the New York Yankees, and the Los Angeles Dodgers. Big market teams that are willing to take on payroll and go into the top 5 of the sport, I think are teams we could see go after him. One team that I think would be a bit of a surprise, kind of a dark horse here, would be the New York Mets. What do you mean? They got Francisco Lindor. They just traded for Marcus Semien. They're not going to take on another big contract from Texas. Well, I think the only way the Mets would make some sense is if they put him over there at third base, which is what we've been discussing since he signed the deal, is that he might eventually have to move over to third. He grades out as a better defensive shortstop, I believe, currently than Francisco Lindor, or very close to it. Both are still pretty good at that position. But in either case, if you're looking to make an improvement offensively, I think the Mets are looking to improve their roster in any way they possibly can. Whether that be a position that's already filled or not, I don't think matters to them. I think defense does matter to them to some extent, which is why they brought in Marcus Semien. But at third base, if you bring in a guy who's able to handle shortstop, think of Manny Machado moving over to third base. I think that's the type of player that they would envision if they were there for, if he was there for the New York Mets type of trade. So we shall see. Let us know in the comment section what you guys think about a possibility of Corey Seager to one of those 3 teams, or maybe another dark horse team that we haven't mentioned yet. But appreciate you guys joining us. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe and join us tonight at 9 o'clock as we break down the latest from the MLB winter meetings. Again, my name is Michael. We'll be live 9 o'clock this evening and every single weekday evening around 9 o'clock here at the Upside. So be sure to hit that like and subscribe. Follow us on X at UpsideSN and on Facebook, Upside Sports Network. We'll see you guys in just a couple of hours.